Hey guys, Bugcat7 here. Okay, it is Monday, July 8th, 2019, and I want to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research channel here on YouTube. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And if you would kindly hit the like button, guys, that would be great. Help support the channel and keep me bringing you this very interesting stuff. All right, well, we're going to talk about a site in Paraguay today, and I'm calling BS on it because I have several reasons why I'm calling BS on it, but we're also going to apply this terminology to it that you probably never heard before, but you heard something like it, OOPARCH, which are out of place artifacts. Well, this terminology is out of place architecture. Okay, so it's not something that I just made up or anything like that, but it is a term used by contemporary um, architects on just unusual architecture in contemporary settings, and there's all this kind of literature and all this kind of stuff. They were showing at Guggenheim Museum in Manhattan, in those couple little pictures there. You can see it right there. Oh, damn focus. All right, so it is Guggenheim in Manhattan, and it's just, it's referring to contemporary architecture that seems out of place in its, canyons of rectangular buildings and whatnot. So it's not something that I made up, but the context is different, you see. So I think, myself and maybe my fellow alternative researchers might start using this kind of terminology to describe some of these archaeological sites and the architecture and the type of work that's done there. I think there's many places this can apply to, but this site in Paraguay is certainly one of them as far as I'm concerned. Now, I ran into it because I ran across the article in Ancient Origins. Okay, so I read this article in Ancient Origins about this San Ignacio Mini, okay, attributed to some Italian architect, obscure Italian architect who was a priest that, we know very little about. But I'm calling BS on this for several reasons, but I ran into this article here, and it's an Ed Whalen article, but it reads like a pretty much just a standard Spanish history of the Americas. And I'm sorry, but if you are a true researcher and a true historian, a student of history, you're going to know that the Spanish are notorious for sanitizing their history. Okay? Very corrupt. Okay? They want to make their history, especially in the Americas, seem very antiseptic and very nice and clean. And, they have their heroes there, which are the conquistadors. But, as we found out from the Vaca, that, they were just brutal and killed. Apparently, we found out through C.W. Ceram's book, The First American, and Charles C. Mann's book, 1491, that they killed something between, we'll put it this way, between 14 and 19 million people died as a result. Okay, if not from brutality, just disease. Okay, which they apparently lacked the immunity from these diseases brought from Europe. And more, unfortunately for the anthropologists and archaeologists and scientists involved and everything, that's not good for them, because that would mean that, more likely, the high likelihood of the peoples here in the Americas being, coming from here only, and not across the Bering Strait, which is a baloney story anyway. Okay, so let's talk about this thing. Well, I try to read this article to you, but I want to read the other stuff for you because it's laughable, is what it is. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, It's laughable. And I know from all my research and all the books I've read about the Spanish and, their histories and what their academics do to sort of clean it all up. Everything is highly suspect. And this first image is of this San Ignacio mini here. I wanted you to really look at this carefully, if you kindly would. Okay? I want you to look at that carefully. Do you see any sort of inconsistencies in the constructions here? Okay? Take a real hard look at that. Alright? This is supposed to be a church. What was a church. Okay? And to me, it's very suspect, and it looks like there's a number of inconsistencies in the construction details here that don't make a lot of sense to me. Okay? I'm sure you can think of some right off the top of your head if you're paying attention. Alright, so let's read this stupid thing here, which is ridiculous. The name Argentina comes from the Latin word for sliver. I don't know, does he mean silver? I think he meant silver. Argentum, and it is indeed a country rich architectural heritage, especially in its main cities. Some of the finest architectural ruins in the country are in the north, and the San Ignacio mini mission is a site that has ruins in an architectural style that is unique to Latin America. Okay, so right off the bat there, I'm like, unique to Latin America. Okay, we'll read more about that later. The mission played an important part in the history of northern Argentina and in a dramatic period of the history of the continent. The site was designated a World Heritage Site by UNESCO in 1996. The mission of San Ignacio Mini. The mission was originally a complex of religious buildings, private housing, and workshops. Was built during the Spanish colonial period. I call bullshit on that. During this era, the Catholic Church was given special privileges and granted extensive lands. The Spanish often granted these rights in remote areas since they believed the Church would convert the native people and quote-unquote civilize them. By hook or by crook, I'm sure. The original mission was found by priests from the Jesuit order in 1692. It was constructed in what was then virgin rainforest, in a region inhabited by the Guarani people. The Jesuits were successful in converting the local people to Christianity and persuading them to adopt a sedentary lifestyle. As a result, the mission expanded over time, and the locals built homes around the churches, engaging in craft and trade. Okay. One big stupid article there. By the 18th century, the mission had become a small town with a population between 3,000 and 5,000 people, most of those being Guarani. Okay, you see this very nice carved, very high level of stone carving here. Okay, with this stone. All right, and the rest of the structure, by comparison, I mean, if you have this level of stone carving at this level, what is to stop you from making a perfectly precise precision type structure? What is to prevent you from doing that? And the whole site is like a mishmash of stuff. So, I mean, it doesn't make sense. San Ignacio Mini was part of the Jesuit Paraguayan province, an area dominated by the Jesuit-controlled missions who protected the indigenous people from slave-raiding parties. The province became a state within a state with its own Guarani militia who often clashed with Brazilian slave traders as portrayed in the 1986 movie The Mission. There was even a printing press at the location that produced works in the Guarani language. However, conflict and the 1767 expulsion of the Jesuits from all Spanish territories meant that the mission declined. During the various wars that plagued the region after the collapse of Spanish and Portuguese empires, the mission was destroyed by a Brazilian force in the early 1800s. The area only became part of the modern nation of Argentina in the 19th century after the War of the Tripartite Alliance. So I'm just suspect from the very beginning with the title of this. It was forgotten about, I mean, I don't know. Whenever I see these archaeological sites, it's like, forgotten like what? I mean, it's like a sore pimple on your face. I don't think you forget about that too easy or whatever. But, you got this thing sticking around over here and nobody knows about it. Nobody says anything about it. Nobody cares about it. I don't think so. Okay. Let's get on with this stupid thing. All right, so the preservation of the site. After its abandonment, the mission was soon overgrown and hidden by the encroaching rainforest and finally forgotten until the 1890s when it was finally rediscovered. The mission was visited by a Brazilian expedition in 1903, which reintroduced the world to the splendid remains, although many of the connecting walls had collapsed due to the weather and neglect. I guess. Maybe. As the fears for the future site were valid, San Ignacio Mini was placed on the World Monuments Watch List in 1996, which led to a series of initiatives that are going to preserve the historic remains. What can be seen at San Ignacio Mini? Here's where ancient origins goes off the tracks for me a little bit, because basically this article reads like any travel article that you might see in some online travel magazine or something like that. Basically for travelers. It's information for travelers, but I'm more interested from a scientific standpoint. But it's funny, this article does not mention a supposed architect in here, I don't think. The remains are some of the most impressive that survived from the Jesuit period of rule in the region. The original mission was built around a square and can still be seen. However, much of the original mission has been lost, and there are only traces of the cabildo, or council house, left. The extensive ruins of the church was designed by an Italian priest in a style of reminiscent of the Baroque. Okay, so they say the Italian priest, but they don't say his name. Okay. It's very interesting to me because I looked at this guy's name and tried tracing it out or whatever. There's very little to be said about this guy anywhere. Who knows if he even existed? Okay. A priest in the style of reminiscent of Baroque. Also integrated elements from the local indigenous Guarani culture and has been described as Guarani Baroque. The original church was 210 feet in length and its walls were 5 feet thick. Okay, so... I'm very suspect of all of that stuff. I'm sorry. I just am. And like I said before, you can see this finely carved stone here. Okay? Look at the rest of this thing. Okay? You're telling me they did this fine carvings right here, and the rest of the thing, they're like, you know what? Just... get anything that's sort of square and rectangular, just throw it up there. We don't need to do this, but just in the front here, just on the doorway here, just do that perfect. Okay, but the rest of this junk, they don't need that. They're only native people. They don't care anyway. So we'll save a couple of bucks. We'll just do the front part of it here, and that'll be it. Okay, and I'm thinking too that some of this was added on and either repaired or whatever it is, because a lot of these header pieces are missing. These archways and stuff are missing from a lot of these. You don't know what kind of doorway was there, but You'll see it in other photos from the site there. Just like many of the Mayan sites, curiously, have the same sort of pieces eroded away. The church entrance is well preserved. Most of the walls are standing, and there are still impressive buttresses and arches. Delicate carvings of angels and saints adorn the entrance as well as some walls, but the roof has long since collapsed. The building was built using local red sandstone, and at sunset, the ruins make a striking impression. And how to get there, and I'm not telling you about that because it's unnecessary. So, let's take a look at the Wikipedia article on this. It's very short, so we get through it quick, but it's laughable. I'm sorry. As I said, if you know anything about Spanish history and what the Spanish mainstream academics have done to their history is very suspect. Anything they have to say about anything is highly suspect, okay? These ruins could have been there already, and they have adopted it. They're famous, just like the Romans, for building their structures on top of the indigenous culture's original constructions in these areas. So that's why it's highly suspect. Okay, so in any case, here's the picture of it here that they give here, and I just, the more I look at it, the more I'm saying to myself, nah, there's a bunch of stuff here that doesn't make sense to me here. And it looks like these angels and things that are on here were added at some point later on. Some of these elements over here were added, and this was put on later on. It's not in the same construction style. It's all different mishmash of stuff. And as I said, if you have the ability to do this fine carving and everything over there, what is with the rest of this thing? You're telling me this is the best you can do? You do this, but let's do this over here. Okay, and how many other sites in the Americas do we see where there's some original architecture, stone-cut architecture there already, and then somebody came along afterwards and did all their own stuff around it? Okay, how many times do we have to see that? But, they're claiming this is strictly Spanish, so... And I'm very highly suspect of it for all these different reasons. Okay? Legitimate reasons. Okay? Okay. So San Ignacio Mini was one of the many missions founded in 1610, but wasn't executed until 1632. So the mission was found, but it wasn't executed, whatever that means, in Argentina by the Jesuits in what the colonial Spaniards called the province of Paraguay of the Americas during the Spanish colonial period. It is located near present-day San Ignacio Valley, some 60 kilometers north of Posadas Misiones province, Argentina. In 1984, it was one of the 4 reducciones in Argentina to be designated by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site. Okay, that's very nice. At least you can tell us the truth about it. Maybe one day. Spanish historians, all bullshit artists. History, yeah, the conquistadors, they were wonderful. They were wonderful. Oh, the Indians were bad too. Well, who cares about that? Does that make this conquistadors better? I mean, it's ridiculous. It's both bad. Bad against bad. Who cares? Doesn't make anybody good. The original mission was erected near the year. Now get this: it was erected near the year 1610. I don't know what the heck that means. Near the year, yeah, somewhere in there. That's how our history goes there in Spain. By Jesuit priests Jose Cataldino and Simon Maceda in a region called Guajara, by the natives as La Pineria, by the Spanish conquistadors in present Parana state, Brazil. Because of constant attacks of the Portuguese bandeirantes, the mission moved in 1632, so it moved, and did not settle in its current location until 1696, so around 1700. I mean, we're not talking a million years ago. My father owned a house in upstate New York that was built in 17 something or rather. Okay, still standing there, wood house, with the upstate forest around it, like a jungle, an upstate jungle. So, doesn't sound, that long ago. It was called San Ignacio Mini, minor in Guarani, to distinguish it from the larger mission, San Ignacio Guazu. Great. So it's a completely different structure, but associated with this other one, which, again, it's just, there's all these ruined architecture things here that are claimed by the Spanish, and I don't trust them. In the 18th century, the mission had a population of around 3,000 people, mostly indigenous peoples. They produced rich cultural and handicraft products, which the Spanish commercialized by trade via the nearby Parana River. After the suppression of the Society of Jesus in 1767, the Jesuits left the mission a year later. Luso-Brazilian forces destroyed the mission in 1817, as well as other missions in the area, in the war against the independent movement in the Banda Oriental. Okay, so, they destroyed it, but it seems like so much of it is there, and the places where it seems to be destroyed or whatever, just the typical places where you find erosion everywhere else in the Americas. The ruins are one of the best preserved and one of several built in the territory of the province of Paraguay, which today is divided among Argentina, Brazil, and Paraguay. Due to its accessibility, it is one of the most visited. Overgrown by dense vegetation, the remains of the mission, built in the Guarani Baroque style, yeah, okay, were found in 1897. It attracted greater popular interest after the 1903 expedition to the site by poet Leopoldo Lugones. The government did not undertake formal exploration and restoration until 1940, so it was an awful long time before they paid any attention to it. Originally, the main square was bounded by the church, a cabildo, a cemetery, a monastery, and some houses. The magnificent church, with 74 meters length and 24 meters width, was designed by Italian priest Juan Brassinelli. Okay, so here's another one of these Italian architects and engineers that is mentioned, okay? Just like in the Azores there, and where I did the research, I did the videos on that, they named these, on the Starfort Islands there, okay? And they named these Italian architects, and then you see it's in red. That means there's nothing to corroborate. There's no evidence to corroborate the existence of this fellow. He's merely mentioned by somewhere, by some people, and now this is by association, purely by association. There is no direct reference to this guy designing this thing at all. Okay? He's a phantom. This guy, and when he supposedly did some other stuff or whatever, but when you look at what he may have done other than this or whatever, it just shows this same exact site over and over again. Okay, and these are Jesuit sanctuaries in Argentina's jungles. Okay, attributed to this phantom architect there, right? And they're showing these sites here, these phantom sites here, and it's just interesting. And the Aboriginal stuff they find around these places, whatnot. And look at this priest over here, the Jose Brassinelli guy, who is the priest architect, whatever, with a big chopper in his hands. Yeah. You see what I mean about the Spanish? They're cuckoo with that, with their cockamamie history that they made up. It's just, I saw some elements in here. I don't know if it was in this or something else, but very suspect. Hold on, we'll get back to that. All right, so it says this Juan Brassinelli guy, who's the phantom Italian priest architect, to build using the local red sandstone. The width of the walls are around 2 meters. What, in spite of the fragile material, led the constructions remain standing after over 2 centuries. Well, 2 centuries is not a long time, guys, for a stone structure. Like I said, my father lived in a house, wooden house built in the 1700s. in upstate New York. Bad place for wood to hang around. In 1984, the ruins were declared as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. The site is located in Museo Jesuitico di San Ignacio Mini Museum, constructed after the international recognition. Other Jesuit mission sites in the Michigan-owned province designated as World Heritage Sites the same year are Reducción de Santa Ana, Santa Maria la Mayor, Nuestra Senora de Laredo. So they don't even have hyperlinks to those. So okay, so I'm not going to read anymore. I'll just take a look at some of these pictures here, and I think here is where I saw. Okay, so they're just showing this thing over and over again, and just the same questions to me. If you have the ability to do this fine stonework and everything, what's up with the rest of this thing? Okay, it looks like Mr. Davis's shop class built the rest of the thing around all the stuff, and then you see these things where elements have been added afterwards. It's very clear. Okay, look at this. Okay, all added afterwards. Okay, this is a Spanish crest here or whatever, done in relief, done in stone, right? Because here's the seal of Spain up here. Okay, it's just done with a completely different kind of rock, or at least not from the same vein of rocks or whatever. It's just totally different. Just another place where they're adding things, elements in here because they saw it elsewhere going on there. They even had the perception. They knew what was going on there. The Spanish aren't stupid, you know. They're good copies. And look, they show this, and they show this fine stonework in here. Look at this stuff up here. What the heck is that? Okay? Give me a break. I'm sorry. It's just, again, another, as far as I'm concerned, this is out of place architecture, just as I said at the beginning here. This is out of place architecture. And like I said, these angels and things were added in afterwards. It's not, it's not what they say it is. And they don't know. There was nothing recorded. They have very little information on it. Okay. Some other sites there that they claim the same style. Okay. So this is the same lentil here, right, with the relief on it, with new stone in there, and this up here with the Spanish crest on it. Look at the rest of it. It looks older, okay? And even some of these things, like the side houses and stuff like that, are built with like megalithic block. You get it here, okay? With maybe a new header for this window put in at some later date, or just a different kind of stone, or they put timbers in there and just built on top of it. And this could be all repurposed stone for all we know from some other thing. Okay, but this is just some of the side houses there, but if you look at the overall site, there's all kinds of, primitive aspects to the constructions there. Just everywhere in there. And it's not the same fine craftsmanship everywhere. And again, I beg that question.